Good morning and welcome. My name is Kimberlé Crenshaw. I serve as the Executive Director for the Detroit Branch NAACP. It is my pleasure to bring Reverend Dr. Jill Zundel, pastor of Central United Methodist Church, to the podium to welcome us to this historic building. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to welcome you to the oldest Protestant church in the state of Michigan. We were started in 1810 down by the river. We moved here in 1864, which concerned the parishioners that we were moving into the suburbs. This church has earned the title of the conscience of the city. We were at the forefront of abolishing capital punishment in 1830 when this congregation witnessed a hanging and tore down the scaffolding and cried, "No more." I was working through our archives and found a flyer from the 60s saying that this church has never promised anyone a comfortable pew. If you attend here, you will always hear the preachers crying out for peace and justice. The reason that we are here today is that Martin Luther King Jr. preached here at Central several times from this historic pulpit. The last time he preached here was 2 weeks before his assassination, and his message was about hope. The pastor at that time, Dr. Henry Hitt Crane, offered King the pulpit even though he was Baptist. But King turned it down because he was too busy at that time, and he offered to reconsider it at a later date that never came to fruition. And so I welcome you to this historic place.
Thank you. It is now my honor to welcome the mayor of the city of Detroit, the Honorable Mike Duggan.
Well, I am just so pleased that Reverend Anthony and the Detroit Branch NAACP are organizing this June Jubilee because Dr. King's march was a march of aspiration about the country we wanted to be, about the city we want to be. And in the Detroit mayor's office behind the desk is a large wall where each mayor has a portrait that defines what they stand for everybody who visits, from neighbors in the city to people around the world. And for the last 10 years, the portrait that's hung in my office has been Dr. King and that march down Woodward Avenue. It defined promise of a city that could be, people marching together, black, brown, white, labor leaders, clergy, political leaders, ordinary citizens, all saying we can have a better world. We've made some progress, but in many ways we've fallen short of that promise. And I think the idea of renewing what that vision was and renewing our commitment to it is a great thing. And Reverend Anthony, thank you so much for organizing this effort.
I don't get no introduction. Okay. It's all right, they say those, never mind. But first of all, I'm very excited. We are excited. We are inspired and motivated by what only occurs in the city of Detroit. I'm pleased to be here with colleagues and friends and business, faith, and labor persons. The fact that we have the mayor here, we're looking forward to a declaration of June Jubilee being in the city of Detroit for June 22nd through the 25th. The fact that we have Brother Sean Fain, who was the new president of the International UAW, along with Ms. Marks, Secretary Treasurer, Chris Illich, who was head of Olympia, and a whole bunch of other stuff, who's working with us, and you're going to hear from him also. And we have so many persons that are part of this process. Ed Rowe, who was a former pastor here and community activist and social reminder of what we need to be about. And we're just very pleased to be here with you. And then we have you, the media, because you can help move this and help folk to understand the significance of what we do. I have a statement, and then I'm going to ask a couple other persons to come and have remarks. It has been 60 years since June 23rd, 1963, when Martin Luther King Jr. was invited to the city of Detroit by the Reverend C.L. Franklin of New Bethel Baptist Church, Reverend Albert Clegg, James Del Rio, Tony Brown Jr., and of course, Walter Reuther, who was then the head of the UAW. They had formed the Detroit Council for Human Rights, significance because of the necessity to bring him to the city of Detroit. Remembering that 14 days after Dr. King spoke here, as Dr. Zundel spoke, giving his last sermon on hope in 63, 14 days later, he would be assassinated in a Memphis, Tennessee motel. The Detroit Branch NAACP is pleased to once again commemorate this historic occasion of our June Jubilee, a celebration of freedom. That's what this is, a celebration of freedom, June 22nd through 25th, right here in the city of Detroit. It was in Detroit that Dr. King gave his first I Have a Dream speech at Cobo Hall on that June day. It is important for all of us to remember that before he went to D.C., he came to the Big D. That's Detroit. He came right here. This is a continuation of a commemoration, not just to honor a dream, but to help implement a plan to bring equity and opportunity to all of America's sons and daughters. The Detroit branch, the nation's largest branch, was in the forefront of the Walk to Freedom in 1993, 2003, 2013, and now 2023. For the past 4 decades, we have stayed on the course marching towards freedom and justice. For 4 days, we will focus on the question of freedom and justice, not only that question, but also to discover and rediscover what Dr. King meant when he wrote his last book, Chaos or Community, Where Do We Go From Here? We hold the answer within our hands as it has been deposited deep within our spirits. Our 4-day schedule will include the following. On Thursday, June 22nd, from 9 to 4, we will have Freedom Summits to be held at the Northwest campus of Wayne County Community College District. The topics will include voter mobilization, registration, and protection, critical race theory, what it is and what it ain't, the civil rights movement and labor, closing the wealth gap through housing and equitable access, the criminal justice system, let's stop the violence. On Friday, June 23rd, a special unveiling of a commemorative statue of Dr. King will be placed in Hart Plaza permanently. We're pleased that Rochelle Riley in the city of Detroit will be leading in that effort, but it is a momentum to the first occasion when Dr. King gave his first I Have a Dream speech right in the city of Detroit. Saturday, June 24th, we will have our walk towards freedom beginning at 10 a.m. from Woodward Avenue and Martin Luther King Boulevard, and then a major rally in Hart Plaza. And then on Sunday, June 25th, the 68th annual Fight for Freedom Fund dinner at Huntington Place at 5 o'clock p.m. Everyone throughout the state and this region is invited to join with us. This is a national event. It's not a local event. It's locally being inspired and planned and facilitated, but it's nationally articulated and related to those people who come from everywhere to be in the city of Detroit. So we're inviting city, suburb, upper, and lower peninsula. Some of the participants or our Freedom Summits will include, and as I call their names, you may reveal their pictures. Derek Johnson, President of National NAACP. Miss Ayanna Gregory, actor, writer, singer. She's the daughter of civil rights icon Dick Gregory, who will perform a one-act play on the civil rights movement. All this is at Wayne County Community College District. Voting rights strategist Dominic Whitehead, National NAACP. Dr. Kimberlé Crenshaw, American legal scholar, civil rights advocate, and leading scholar on critical race theory, since that's a topic that everybody's talking about. Most folks don't even know what they're talking about because they don't understand what it is, simply telling the truth about history. But she's one of the leading proponents. She's from the UCLA School of Law and Columbus School of Law. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, author, professor, and philosopher, Vanderbilt University. Jamon Jordan, teacher, historian, educator, founder of the Black Scroll Network, City of Detroit historian. Our good friend and brother Ken Coleman, historian, writer, teacher, advocate. We're very pleased as we also celebrate the 50th anniversary of the hip-hop industry. We will be joined by Dougie Fresh, one of the original positive rappers, on Friday and Saturday in the March for Freedom. We have more special guests coming who will join us for this weekend, which we will announce in a few days. Finally, we are very pleased to indicate that our special speaker for the 68th Annual Fight for Freedom Fund Dinner will be, and how appropriate that it is for this historic occasion, the winner of the race that raced the first African-American senator from the great state of Georgia, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock. He is also the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, pastored formerly by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This will be a tremendous 4 days, and people can sign up to volunteer for marshals, ushers, general support. You can go to DetroitNAACP.org or call 313-871-2087. I think that deserves an applause. All the stuff that I just ran, somebody ought to be saying amen. That's a good thing. And guess what? We ain't finished. We got more folk coming. We can't give it to you all today because we want the press to come back and cover it for another day. And so we're giving you this piece by piece. But this is by no means the end of it all. And so we want to recognize this. I'm going to ask now that I'm pleased that Sean Fain is here, president of International UAW. He was not scheduled to be here because of the business, but he did come. We thank him for that, but we're going to have the Secretary Treasurer to say some remarks because he is the chair of the Walk Towards Freedom. If he wants to say hello or anything, he can do that. Then I'm going to have my good friend, brother, the senior corporate leader for the 68th Annual Fight for Freedom Fund Dinner, Chris Illich, to come and bring a march. It's not often that we have people like this here, and as well as Ken Coleman, who's over these summits. The summits are very important because they reflect the call to action. You just don't have a march and go home. Marches call attention to issues, and you deal with those issues as to how you're going to address them. And so we're putting the call to action before the march, that people will have that as they go and engage in the march. So I'm going to ask Ms. Monk if she would come, and then Ken Coleman, and then Chris.
Well, good morning, everyone. So,
Morning.
Good morning. I am so happy that Sean, who's recovering, our president, who's recovering from walking pneumonia, decided to come in. He's feeling a little better, but I'll still make the remarks here, and thank you, Sean, for coming. I'm so glad you're feeling better. So, as the senior community sponsor of the MLK 60th March, the UAW is proud to stand with the NAACP and our community partners in honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. This march is not just commemoration of the past, but a call to action for the present and the future. We must continue to fight for justice, equality, and opportunity for all people, regardless of their race, gender, or background. The UAW is committed to this cause, and we will continue to work tirelessly to promote social and economic justice for all working families. We thank the NAACP for their leadership in organizing this important event, and we look forward to marching alongside our brothers and sisters in solidarity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Brother Coleman.
Thank you so much, Reverend Anthony, and thank you all for being here. It is a pleasure, indeed, a pleasure to be on this team. As a reporter, as a historian, as a Detroit resident and native, the NAACP has been a big part of my life, and I know a lot of yours too. And so we are excited, quite frankly, about the weekend coming up, the Jubilee weekend. I wanted to provide, for a couple quick moments, a little bit of historical context around the 1963 Walk to Freedom. Reverend Anthony has done a brilliant job. In fact, many of my notes, he's already mentioned them, so I'll be very brief. But I wanted to talk just briefly about the origin of the 1963 Walk to Freedom. Reverend Anthony, you know that Reverend Franklin and Reverend Clegg and others were concerned about the state of black folk in Detroit in 1963. And so that context for the walk, carried out, as Reverend Anthony pointed out, by the Detroit Council for Human Rights, really looked back, Reverend Anthony, to 1943. And we all know in 1943, in this great town, we had civil unrest. And I just want to be candid about this. We certainly have a lot of allies to the NAACP and other civil rights organizations. But if I'm candid as a historian, I have to point out, I'm duty-bound to point out, that the major element of the 1943 civil disturbance, race riot, if you will, was really some white folk stomping on the neck, putting their foot on the neck of black people. That was going on because Detroit, between 1940 and 1950, the population of African American people in Detroit doubled from 149,000 people in 1940 to 300,000 people in 1950. And so Reverend Clegg, Reverend Franklin, and others in 1963 took the position that in a real sense, a lot of civil rights gains had not been made for African American people between that 1943 race riot and 1963. That is why the march was formed. Now, as I pointed out, we have great allies in other communities. And quite frankly, our UAW friends know that Walter Reuther, as Reverend Anthony pointed out, was a leader, got on board very early. Mayor Duggan, you know that city government got on board very early. Common Council, as it was known at that time, we call it City Council today. Common Council issued the permit in 1963. And then a very young progressive mayor, Jerry Kavanaugh, mayor of Detroit at the time, got on board with the march. And we know it, of course, some of us were there. Many of us have read about the march coming south down Woodward Avenue, past this great edifice here, and on to what was known at the time as Cobo Hall. I am so glad and so proud of the Detroit Branch NAACP for continuing to remember the march. I was a young reporter in 1993, and Reverend Anthony had just been elected president of the branch, and I participated in that 93 march as a reporter, and I've been to, I believe, all of them since that time, and very excited that we will remember again the great 1963 Walk to Freedom March. And I'm so glad to have so many people be part of a team of so many great people that will make it a success. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ken. Now you can see why we have him as one of our coordinators for the Freedom Summits, great historian, great context. A lot of things have happened since 1943. And we didn't have a Chris Illich back then. We didn't have a Mike Duggan or Sean Fain back then. We had them in different kind of perspectives, but the fact that we can come together and stand now in preparation for that is a little different. So let me introduce Chris Illich, who is the Senior Corporate Chair for the 68th Annual Fight for Freedom Fund Dinner. Chris?
Great, thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning. Thank you, Reverend Anthony, for that. You know, I'm honored to serve as the Senior Corporate Chair of the 68th Fight for Freedom Fund Dinner, and especially in this very special 60th anniversary of the Freedom Walk. You know, in 1989, my father, Mike Illich, moved his Little Caesar headquarters from Farmington Hills to Detroit's Fox Theater office building. That very same year, he had the privilege to serve as Senior Corporate Chair of this very dinner that I just spoke of. And the very next year, 1990, Little Caesars was named a lifetime member of the Detroit Branch, the NAACP. Ever since then, our mission has been to do everything we can to help our hometown of Detroit and to provide opportunity for Detroiters. This is very aligned with the mission of the Detroit branch of the NAACP. So I am humbled and honored to serve as senior corporate chair of this year's dinner and to be a part of the Freedom Walk, and look forward to supporting these wonderful events. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We also are pleased to have Charity Dean, who is the community co-chair for the dinner, and she's working with a number of black business organizations in the community trying to move that forward. So Charity, please.
I'm a millennial, if you haven't noticed. And we get a bad rap. Millennials get a bad rap. Gen Z, we get a bad rap because oftentimes we forget about what happened before us. You've heard the term, oh, that's ancient history. Today we're here talking about history and hope. And I would submit that it is because of our history that we can have hope. The Metro Detroit Black Business Alliance, our mission is to help close the racial wealth gap by empowering Black-owned businesses. We do that every day, but we do not do that alone. We stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before us, and especially with our partners at the Detroit Branch NAACP. To be here in this historic building and to participate in June Jubilee, we are ecstatic. We are a young organization, but we do not forget our history, and it is because of our history that we have hope. We are so excited to be the community co-chair for the Fight for Freedom Fund dinner, and we are excited to be partners with the NAACP. Thank you.
Thank you, Charity. Certainly, we would like to have our Michigan State Conference President of the NAACP, Ms. Yvonne White, to come and to bring greetings. Yvonne?
Thank you so much, Reverend Anthony, my branch president. On behalf of the entire NAACP, I have the distinct honor and pleasure of not only serving as the state president, but a member of the National Board of Directors. And we at the NAACP fully support Reverend Anthony, Kimberlé Crenshaw, and the entire Detroit branch NAACP. This is not just an NAACP event. This is a people's event. This is history being made, not only here in Detroit, but in the state of Michigan and throughout this entire country. So this is your event. We need to show up and show out, step up and step out, and make sure that our voices are heard during the June Jubilee event happening nowhere else but right here in the city of Detroit. Thank you, Reverend Anthony. Thank you, NAACP, for all that you do.
Thank you, Norm.
And we appreciate you and join you wholeheartedly. God bless you.
Thank you, Norm. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President. Let me also encourage people to go to our webpage, DetroitNAACP.org. Everything we articulated is on there. You can also upload pictures. If you've been in marches 63, 2003, 93, 13, and all of those, we want you to load them up so that we can also identify them. We also intend to recognize persons who were in the 1963 march, the originators. We want to recognize you. So if you know of persons who were there, go to the website. I also call the Detroit branch, 313-871-2087. I also see in the audience some people who are working with us as committee chairs in other areas. Rayford Jackson working with our entertainment committee. We appreciate him. We just have to monitor him sometimes. We also want to acknowledge and to thank everybody else who's here. Brother Kevin Tolbert, Lakeisha Beckton, Sean, they still are NAACPers. I mean, you know, you got to claim it. I know they're UAW, but they also are NAACPers. And so we want to acknowledge them. Let me pause now to see if any of the media has any questions concerning anything that we've articulated. That means that everything is crystal clear. or totally confusing. I believe that that really means that it's crystal clear if there are no questions. Again, please go to the website, media. You can help us drive people there, DetroitNAACP.org. We need people to register. We want folk to register. We want to know that you're coming. Your organizations can sign up. We want everybody, black, white, red, brown, yellow. It's going to be mellow in the city of Detroit. Everybody is invited to be a part of this June Jubilee. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you coming.